Okay, hi, this is Jerry Kay with Best Choice Realty, and we have with us today on the webinar CW Title. Kim Gailey is our title account rep, and I believe Linda Borselli is with her, who's the escrow LPO and is, the subject matter expert in the Firpta that we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to start out with introducing them and having them talk a little bit. We're going to talk about what it means when you're representing the buyer and the seller, how to fill out the form, and then we'll go over a couple scenarios. So take it away, Kim.
Great. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see all of you. I had to sign in from my phone because there's no camera on our 3 screens. So interesting. I came into the office to do some title reviews for you. So just welcome. It's great to see all of you. And again, just if you don't know anything about CW Title, we're doing all kinds of inventive new things. And we are the largest local title company in Washington State. And we keep our dollars here. Everything is done locally. If you need access to anyone on our team, including our vice president or our president, we're happy to help you. As a lot of you know that have taken our classes, Brad in our title department goes out and does a lot of the examining of your properties themselves. Before COVID and the Stay at Home, Stay Safe launched, we had built an app for your buyers, and that's called CW Secure, and it's on the App Store. It's just one word, CW Secure. And the buyers can just take a picture of the front of their check and the back of their check, and they can deposit that right from the comfort of their home. So no need to go anywhere. It is all double encrypted. In fact, we use the same security as the Pentagon. So it's very safe, and it has been a huge hit. A week and a half ago, we launched another new program that's called CW Accelerator because we are watching trends. And through the last few months, we have seen such an uptick in files that need to close quickly, 21 days or less. So we have CW Accelerator, and those are all coded and monitored internally because we've seen closings anywhere from 4 days to 21 days. And we launched it 2 weeks ago. And in the 2 weeks that we've launched it, June over June, there's a 470% increase on files that needed to be closed in a quicker manner. So I'm sure that you guys are all seeing that in the market. You know how quickly everything's moving. And then lastly, and I don't know if you guys could share the screen of the new home books. I'm super excited to tell you that we've updated our home book design. I know that Rochelle is a huge fan of CW and our home books especially. And we have 2 styles to choose from now. And one is a visualist and one is a minimalist. And in addition to the new covers and the new tent cards, we've cleaned up the property profiles and the comps to match the new city profiles. So there's no more yellow headers. You'll also notice that the parks are now mapped out for each of the community properties. So you can see those as well. And we've changed the look of it a little bit. And we've also offer an e-home book for only $4. And that gives you tips on how to include that in the MLS and things like that. Or if you do want the hard copy, those are $10. We can either email or we can mail them to the property, or we can mail them to your home, or of course we can PDF them to your office. If we are mailing, the time is a little bit more than just the 24-hour turnaround, but these have been a huge hit. I did a video yesterday with one of my clients on a penthouse condo down on Thea Foss, and she was so excited. And they're just gorgeous and a really useful tool, especially if you're looking for ways to set yourself apart in a listing presentation, or if you want to just highlight that home and make it shine. Like I said, they're a great resource, and agents are really procuring a lot more business who have that at their fingertips. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Linda. She's going to talk to us all about Firpta and the importance of representing your buyer correctly.
Hey everyone, I'm Linda with CW Title. I'm the escrow compliance person here, and I deal with Firpta a lot. So truly, if you have questions as we're going through this presentation, feel free to jump in and ask questions. I am not an accountant. Nobody at CW Title can represent the transaction as an accountant, and we don't want to do that on TV either. So in regards to Firpta, it is a tax for capital gains for a foreign person. And the IRS does require that at closing, the escrow agent pay the Firpta tax within 20 days of closing to the IRS if you have a foreign seller. The tax is deducted from the seller's proceeds, and the percentage of tax is going to be on your actual sales price. It's not what the seller believes their gain is. It's on the actual sales price. So if you're selling a property for $600,000, it's going to be the tax based on the $600,000. So in regards to Firpta, it's critical that you know about your buyer's occupation. If the buyer is a person, has to be a person, cannot be a corporation or a trust or an LLC. If it's a person and sales price is under $300,000, the buyer agrees to sign the certification that they'll live in the property for 50% of the time for 2 years. The seller does not have to pay a Firpta tax. That's if the property is owner occupied by the buyer signs the certification, and the sales price is under $300,000. If the property is being sold between $300,000 and $1 million, and the buyer is a person, not a trust, an LLC, or a corporation, the tax will be 10%. So in the case of $600,000, the tax would be $60,000. And CW Title and all the other escrow companies have to mail that $60,000 into the IRS within 20 days of closing. And again, that comes from the seller's proceeds. If the buyer does not sign the certification or is a corporation or a trust, then the tax is going to be 15%. Okay, so that's going to take you up from a $660,000 tax to a $90,000 tax that's coming out of the seller proceeds. So it's real important. We had a situation just a few weeks ago where the 22E was signed by the buyer that said the buyer was going to occupy the property in that section, that bottom section of your 22E, that they were going to occupy the property and the tax was 10%. The problem with that was it was a corporation that was purchasing the property, and that section of the PSA probably should not have been presented to the buyer to sign, because there was some issues with the seller then getting very upset at the closing that the tax changed from 10% to 15%. So at CW Title, when we find out we have a Firpta file, the escrow teams contact me. I work with our accounting department. We get the paperwork prepared. I will send out an email to agents letting them know the situation that Firpta is going to apply. Give the agents copies of all the documents that their buyers and sellers are going to be asked to sign for them to pass on to their clients. And we really encourage the clients then to talk to a tax professional. So any questions?
Just a quick question. So if the buyer is a trust, essentially, it could be a personal trust, like a husband and wife that have a trust, basically. And I guess it has to be a non-US trust, right? Basically.
Nope. A trust would cost the seller 15%. So the buyer may not care what the seller's paying in tax, but a trust, because a trust can't occupy, the people in the trust can occupy, but a trust is considered a non-owner occupancy transaction. So the seller would have to pay 15%. So when you're taking, if you get multiple offers and you have a foreign seller, you have to sell it to a live person. If they want to go in the name of the trust, they want to change their ownership and go take title as a trust, it will change your Firpta tax to 15%.
Got it. If they take the title in their name and they eventually transfer it to a trust, it doesn't affect the deal at all, basically.
You'll have already paid the tax. You'd probably just have to have them talk to an accountant, because if they change it, it could affect that then it's responsible for the extra 5%. Because it's now a trust that owns it and not a person.
Okay. Thanks.
Because they have 2 years, 50%. Now, of course, anything over $1 million, buyer's occupancy does not matter. The seller has to pay 15%. So anything over $1 million, the seller will have to pay 15%. And I deal with probably about 3 Firptas a month now, 3 to 4 Firptas a month now, and it's really starting to increase, obviously. I think the highest we've paid out is $277,000 to the IRS for Firpta.
So thank you, Linda.
If you do have questions and you want to send me an email, I have an email all set up, kind of explaining Firpta. I attach the flyer that we have so that your client can go and talk to their accountant or their tax professional. CW title can't determine residency, immigration, or taxation for customers. So if you don't know the answers, we of course don't know the answers. So, but we really encourage them to talk to their tax professional.
And we do have at the end of the slide, and it's something that we're recording this and that you'll have later. We do have a tax professional that we're providing the information for. There's a gentleman up in Blaine, and we'll go over that later, but he's very familiar with this. And then also down here in Pierce County, McFerrin Law Office is very familiar with these kind of transactions, and so they're readily available and able to help us. So it looks, I mean, we've kind of talked, you know, Linda's provided a lot of information to us on, you know, who does this impact? I mean, it really does impact both parties. So the seller has to pay the tax, but the issue is that the buyer is the one responsible to determine if there's a tax that's owed. And if you don't determine that at closing and somehow for some reason it gets away, that tax liability lands on the buyers. It's their responsibility to pay later. So the impact is really for both parties. And that's why it's so important for us as sales agents to know what we're doing and to get the right information to close these files. We do need to take a little accountability for this, but we're not necessarily responsible for what that person puts on the form. So if that makes sense. Is it required for a transaction file? You know, back in the day that on the addenda line, it used to be a drop down, and they've removed it, which is kind of unfortunate. I liked it as a drop down, but it really is a disclosure. They're considering it a disclosure now. But if you were to look at the rules that the MLS provides for filling out line 14, it does say that the seller is to execute and deliver to the closing agent a 22E. So as far as the firm's concerned, we would like that to have that on every file, because it is something that they need to provide to escrow. So we need to facilitate that for them. We don't ever want to fill the form out for them, but we do need to provide the form so that they can fill it out, so that escrow gets the information that they need. And if, like Linda said, if they have any questions, you need to refer them to a tax professional. If I represent the buyer, how should I treat the 22E when the seller has not provided it? When I'm filling out, lots of us see on the listing agreement, there is a line item on the listing that you can, that's the first place that I would go to look if I was the selling agent filling out an offer. is I would look on the listing to see if there's Firpta withholding. It's yes or no. I wouldn't necessarily rely on that answer, but that's the first place that I would go to get it. You can fill out, which I think most selling agents do, but if you don't know, you should leave line 14 blank, and then you send over your offer, and then the seller is to fill that out. And that does not, a lot of people get confused because they think that that's considered a counter offer when they go and check the box, and that does not mean that it's a counter offer. They're just filling out the check mark. But what we find when we're reviewing docs and stuff is that that line item gets missed. So you kind of need to ask the listing agent to have their seller check that box. But as I just mentioned, that's not the only thing that we're going to rely on for Best Choice Realty. For Best Choice Realty, we really do want the 22E filled out because it really explains things. Just the line 14 on the first page of the purchase and sale agreement, most buyers and sellers don't even know what the word Firpta means. So I think a lot of times they wouldn't even know, am I a Firpta? What is Firpta? What does Firpta stand for? I don't know. But if you give them this form, it spells it out. They read through the form, they're pretty much checking I am or am not. And where it really falls into play is when the person checks I am. And that's what we're reviewing as the firm to determine if we need to instruct the selling agent to go back and have their buyer complete the second part of that. But I think as agents, we don't have any liability if you actually have the seller fill this form out. This form is for them to check the box. So down below in the second section, Shannon, if you wanted to switch over to the buyer's certification down below, this is what Linda was talking about. It's whether they checked I am or am not. Rochelle, do you have the second page? Who's controlling the?
Yep,
there we go. So the second section is only if the seller is. So this is going to happen after you've sent in your offer and then they've sent it signed back and now they've checked the box. You still have a responsibility to review the documents that you get. Of course, I'm going to help you when I get to review the file, but hopefully you've seen this before. If you see that they checked that they are a citizen, then your buyer needs to check one of the boxes and sign the form. And I'm here to help with that, but that really is, your responsibility to your client to help facilitate this part of that form. So I hope that makes sense. So this is the first page of Form 21 where it's highlighted seller is or is not. And this is, again, when you're the selling agent and you're filling out a purchase and sale agreement, like I said, sometimes you don't know and you wouldn't know. So the first place you would go to the listing agent, the listing site on the MLS and see if that check mark is checked. And if not, you could also call the listing agent and ask them. That's another, I wouldn't take verbal, I would still get it in writing, but just for the initial offer, you could do that. Or probably best case scenario is leaving it blank and sending it over, but then following up and making sure they check the appropriate box so that we know if the buyer has to complete the rest of the form.
This is Willie. Quick question. So at the bottom, if the person is a citizen, we as the buyer's rep, there should be nothing for us to fill out on the second page at the bottom half, is it? I think I just missed that.
Correct. It's only if they are a non-foreign person. Right?
Oh, okay. See, I misunderstood it. I thought I heard that we still had to fill out something.
Yeah, no, it's only if you answer I am at the top, then you would answer, you would have the buyer complete it.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Good question, Willie.
So now we can go over some scenarios. So this is a situation, it's kind of like a little test. I kind of wish we had our little hand raising thing or we could take a poll here. So scenario one is the listing agent goes on a listing appointment and the following individuals are listed on title. The husband, he's a US citizen, he lives in the house. The wife, she has a green card for the US, she's a Canadian citizen, she lives in the house, and the wife's mom, who lives in France, she's a French citizen, no green card for the US. How many 22E forms need to be filled out and provided?
That's a good question. My wife is a Japanese. She has a green card. One. For the one, well, I don't know the rule on having a green card. If that makes them not have to fill out Firpta or the 22E. So my guess between 1 and 2, I don't know about the wife, but definitely the mom, if she's on the title.
So I'm seeing a couple people have said none, some people have said 2. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of a poll, Jerry Kay.
Well, Linda, do you have any, see, this is the part for me. I mean, I have my own answer, but I'm myself a little confused on the green card.
So if you read the question, if you flip back to that 22E and you read the question, can you flip back to that 22E?
Go back in time, Shannon.
Yeah.
Go back to the actual 22E.
Okay, at the top where it says, if I can't see the whole page, unfortunately, but it says, I am or I am not a non-resident alien for US taxation. Is that how it reads? I can see.
It says, I am or I am not a non-resident alien or a foreign corporation, foreign partnership, foreign trust, foreign estate, or other foreign business entity for purposes of US income taxation. It's line 13 and 14.
By CW title, we wouldn't know if a green card works. We don't know about the individual's taxation information. The client should know that if they are a citizen for US taxation. So if they are paying taxes and they plan to pay taxes and report the sale of the property, then the husband and wife would be one, they should fill out one together. And then the mom, of course, we would be paying tax on the mom in France. And the way CW title looks at it, if you have a division of property like this, we would pay tax on 1/3 of the sales price at the appropriate Firpta tax level of the property. So if you have $1 million property, the buyer's going to occupy, we'll go with that $600,000 property. We're going to pay Firpta tax on $200,000 for the seller. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so Patty had mentioned, she said, if the mom is on title. So in this scenario, everyone's on title. So we know we have a US citizen. So the husband, I mean, he could fill it out just so that escrow knows that he is not for a foreign person. The wife can fill one out saying she is one, but then that's where we might send them off to the tax accountant because maybe she's already paid in her taxes on her green card. We don't know. That's what the tax professional's for. And then the mom, we know for sure that she's going to have to. So like Linda said, you know, and if it's a third, they'd be determining that. So there's at least 2 that need to be filled out, right?
I think you're right, Jerry Kay. It's safer to have all 3 because we don't want to.
I think so too.
We don't want to be providing tax advice, right? Or we're not CPAs. We don't have that experience, and neither does CW, right? So we shouldn't be instructing them on how to fill it out. We just should be providing the disclosure, much like a Form 17, right? So that maybe we think of it as Form 17. It's just like in another form that we need to kind of put in that bundle and have them fill it out appropriately, so that we're not seen as trying to sway them one way or the other.
And only doing one for the husband and the wife, it does get a little confusing because it really is, I mean, you can only write one, not that we recommend that you put the taxpayer's social security number on there. Escrow will get that information from them, but there really is only one spot to put one. I mean, you can't put two on there, so why not? I think it'd just be clean and clear to have each one fill out their own form and sign the form.
If there's not a confusion of, if they're both US citizens, it's okay just to have, you know, like John and Sally Smith, right? We can just have
To
them.
say, no, I'm not, yeah.
Okay.
But when it starts getting muddy, then, I mean, you might as well just help escrow out and just have each one fill out a form and then let them take the ball from there. So that was scenario number one. And then this next scenario, I mean, to be honest with you, we actually had this scenario at Best Choice Realty. And this is one of our possibly first E&O claims that we've ever had in this firm, and we've just had it. And it was a dual agency situation, and it did involve Firpta. And that's what we're starting to see, like Kim said and Linda, it's rising. We have a lot of other people coming from other countries and investing in the United States, and this is on the rise. And so it's something that we really need to take very seriously. So we had a listing agent. She went on a listing appointment. The seller tells her that they are not a US citizen, and they filled that out on the 22E. That was great. The seller gets signed around with the buyer after there were multiple offers and they had to choose. And this is where Linda was talking about that this is something that you need to consider as a listing agent. If all apples are to apples, it's a very fair, all the numbers are the same to net to the seller. You might look at your 22E and see who's, you know, which buyers on there. Are they a trust, an LLC? Because that could make a difference. You might want to choose the easy one if all apples were to apples. The mutual acceptance in this scenario on the Form 21, the Firpta indicated that the seller was not a foreign investor. So at that point, there was some confusion. You know, is the seller a foreign citizen subject to the Firpta tax or not? Seller then tells the listing agent, because he was savvy, he's been through this before, he knew he needed to pay a tax. He instructs the listing agent to have the buyer change their disclosure on the buyer certification on the 22E, because he knew it's 15. But if I could get the buyer to mark the box that they're going to be living in there full time, then I would only have to pay 10. So he was kind of strong arming her to get this done. And our listing agent went to the selling agent and said, hey, could you have the buyer change their form? And what ended up happening, what came into escrow, was that even if they changed their form that they were living in there, the underwriter at escrow determined that it was an LLC, and that just the same as what we talked about with the trust. Trusts and LLCs can't occupy a property. So it didn't matter what they had on the box. They still had to charge that seller the 15% because it didn't fall into the clarifications or the rules of what determines between 10 and 15. So it didn't matter. I think, you know, and this happened one day before closing. I mean, this was about to just totally fall apart on both of our agents in the firm. And it doesn't matter. It's the government. They owe the tax. And the important thing for us is that we're not telling anybody how to fill out the form. That's for them to fill out. And you're not talking to the other side and telling them how to have their client fill out the form. That's not our duty. The listing agent has a duty to the seller, and the selling agent has a duty to the buyer, and you shouldn't be instructing the other side on how to fill out something like this. And if you go to the bottom of the form, I don't know if you can scroll back there, Shannon, a little bit. It says under penalties of perjury. That's why I like this form so much, and why we don't rely on just that check in the box on the first page of the purchase and sale agreement, because it's strictly, if you look down on lines 40, 41, and 42, it's under penalties of perjury. I declare that I have examined this, and to the best of my knowledge and belief, both statements are true and correct. Because if you don't, and they find that it was a false statement, it's punished by fine, imprisonment, or both. That's why this is so important to us and to the firm and to you, because you can get sued. The firm can get sued because we're kind of giving some sort of level of advice by giving these forms, but that's where we need to refer people off to the people that know, the tax accountants. By giving them this form, it's pretty clear as day. And I think that's why it's very important that we start using this. What should the listing agent and buyer's agents do? So in this scenario, anybody have any opinions or questions? What did that say? So somebody popped up a question here. Shannon, can you read that question? I can't get my mouse to.
Absolutely. So it says, if the other agent is nice, like Rochelle, sellers and buyers shouldn't have a problem with the change and sign accordingly. Wish all agents are like Best Choice agents.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of already answered the question for you. I mean, you really should refer people to a tax accountant. You should refer them. You should have them fill out the form, give it to escrow. And if they have questions on if they owe the tax, don't owe the tax, that they really need to be reaching out to somebody that knows more about these situations. Many agents in our firm have used Roy Lentz. He is officed out of Blaine. He's way up north by the Canadian border, but he deals with this over and over and over again. And McFerrin down here off of 72nd, down here in Tacoma. And I have I have a email that came across. They also do 1031 tax exchanges for foreign persons. And they have ways of getting through some of those sticky situations, and they're willing, he even said they take calls and stuff. So they don't necessarily charge you a fee if you just have a question. So they're willing and able to answer any questions that you guys may have. And we'll send this out to you guys in an email so that you have the information. Does anybody have any questions?
I've been through a lot of classes, Jerry Kay and Linda, and I think I learned more from you guys. I think a lot of the classes that are like 3-hour Firpta, it's like it goes right over my head. I'm still trying to figure out what is the law, what do I have to do. I really liked how you guys just kind of got right to it of what is important, what's my responsibility, and no, well done, good job, you guys. I don't have a question, just a comment.
And you guys all know that you can reach out to Rochelle and I at any time if you have a question. I mean, we'll answer as much as we can, and if we can't, we're going to refer you to an accountant. But feel free to call, text, email, and we'll try and walk you through it.
So just to reiterate, Jerry Kay, if the seller did not fill out the form or disclose that they were a foreign citizen investing in real estate and they just sold their home, the buyer, what action can the buyer take after the closing when they get hit with that bill? Well,
I mean, after closing, I mean, I would, as a selling agent, if I didn't get the form, I'd be pushing and asking it up until closing. I mean, I'd be educating the listing agent on why it's so important for my client that we get that information, because I'm protecting my client. And it does say, and you can refer back to the manual on the MLS for Form 21 or 28, condo residential. It says the seller's required to execute this form and give to escrow. So that's where I'd point them to. I'd educate them, and then I'd start calling up escrow, because escrow has their own ways of talking to the clients and getting information from them. So, I mean, for me, if I didn't get them, I'd get the information before we closed, because I know there were ramifications to the buyer.
In CW Title, we send out our own form in a part of our open package to the seller, and we send one to each seller to complete. So we would be asking for that form as well.
So
It's just-
Linda, if you,
Certification form, it's not 22E. We have our own.
if you suspect that they are you, I mean, you're asking, what if they don't fill one out for you? Are you withholding money or?
We require that they fill one out for us. If they don't, then we tell them we'll withhold money.
There you go. So it behooves them to fill it out because maybe they're not. And escrow's withholding money until they know for sure, until it's cleared. Because otherwise then the buyer's stuck with paying the tax, and that's really not fair. It's unfortunate that it lands on the property. It doesn't move on with the seller, because to me that's the seller's tax, but it's kind of like a lien on the property, and now the buyer owns the property and they're stuck with it. So that's why this is such an important topic and why we're going over it.
I have another question that came in. Hopefully you can answer it. And if not, I'll have to call Roy. But what if a seller is foreign and there is a withholding of tax, Linda? Can that be rolled into their purchase, like where it kind of like a 1031 exchange? Can that be done?
Well, because the requirement for escrow to pay it in 20 days, we have to pay the IRS. So we have to do tax papers to get anything to roll in. So in order to avoid any penalty and interest for non-payment, CW Title, we mail the check in probably within 3 days of closing.
Okay.
The 20 days, we mail it in right away. So even if it's a simultaneous closing, there's no way to roll it in because again, we don't determine capital gains.
Right.
That somebody does on their tax returns. That's why they have to work with the IRS to get the refund.
Got it. So that would
Okay.
be if they were rolling proceeds, because they needed a certain amount of proceeds to purchase, right, Linda? They would need to factor that in. So you would want to get ahead of that, right? A client who is maybe foreign overseas, maybe from China or Japan, right, would want to contact their closer like you and understand maybe what that tax, like how much you would withhold. Was that correct? Especially if they're purchasing another home. Okay.
I have another question that came through is how would the Firpta tax apply if the seller was in short sale or foreclosure status?
Well, it's funny. I don't know many lenders that are willing to let the IRS have their money because they're already taking it short. The IRS gets paid before the lender. So in the short sale market, when we had that happen in 2010, 2009, 2010, a lot of lenders just let the property go into foreclosure and the house didn't sell.
So that, watch out for that too, because I think short sales will be on the rise in certain areas. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Linda and Kim, for joining us today and for going over this really important situation that's arising and getting more prevalent in our industry. And we appreciate you being here and thank you for giving us your contact information for future questions. So like we said, we did record this. It will be available to all the agents. And I also, like I said, I have something from McFerrin where they talk about the 1031 exchanges and trusts and things. It's a really neat email that they talk about it. It really would behoove you to actually get on their little mailing list because they send out almost weekly things that are very eye-opening to me as a managing broker. So we'll send that along too. But thank you so much and look forward to having you guys on some other webinars in the next coming week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary
Bye.
Kay. Thanks,
You're welcome.
CW.
Thank you.